So hello, this is Nikki and I am back again with another video talking about books. So if you watched my last video, you'll know that I have decided to come back to YouTube and talk about books and all things bookish. So today I thought that I would talk about books that I have read either this year, last year, or even many years ago, that have stayed with me as a reader, and books that I've really enjoyed. And there's some books that you read that you think, yeah, they're okay, they're fine, and you just kind of read and you move on. There are other books that you read and you think, wow, that was a book. And those are the books that stay with you and that you still think about even a while after you've read them. And then there's a few different genres in the books today. I'm also being a bit cheeky and I have a little glass of wine. I say little glass of wine, that's quite a big glass of wine, isn't it? I will say it's past the yard arm. And I am legal drinking age. So cheers everybody. And without further ado, I'm going to have a quick sip. Ooh, that's nice. And we will get started. So the first book I'm going to start with, I think I read this last year. And I think this was if I'm right, this was the beginning of my journey into Japanese fiction. And this was a book that I really genuinely loved. I'm not going to lie, it did actually make me cry at the end. And that is The Travelling Cat Chronicles. So the premise of this book is about a man and his cat. And they go on like an epic road trip across Japan. The reason being is that, and we don't know why at the beginning of the book, the chap Satoru, Satoru, so I don't know if I'm saying that right, needs to find a new home for the cat, and the cat's called Nana. So they embark on a journey, and I think part of the reason I like this book so much is I love the idea of the road trip across Japan. We get lots of different scenery and different places, and throughout the road trip they are going to visit old friends of his to see if any of them are suitable homes for Nana to go and live in. And as the story unfolds, you start to read between the lines of why this road trip is happening and why this man has reached a really difficult decision to have to rehome the cat. It's a real gentle read. Sorry, I've got my window open, so you might geese have just flown over. Sorry if you hear that. Oh, it's lovely. I mean, I think I enjoyed this not purely because I obviously have a cat of my own. And I think that added another layer to the story for me because I am a cat owner. But what I also liked is that parts of this book are told from the point of view of the cat as well as the chap. And that gives a slightly different edge to it. I think now I have seen reviews where people said they didn't like that. They didn't like the fact that the cat had a role in the book where the cat talks to you. I personally quite liked it. I liked the point of view of the cat. I liked how the cat interacted with other animals that it came into contact with either whilst they were travelling or when they went to visit places. And the cat's quite funny, I think, and has that sort of superiority that I think we think cats tend to have. So for me, that really was a really good part of this book, was that you had that POV of the cat. Like I say, it made me cry. But if you haven't read any Japanese fiction and you're wondering where to start, I think this is a really good starting point. I think this is a really good introduction to it. And if, like me, you like cats, then I think you are going to really love this one. And this one has stayed with me. I really genuinely enjoyed it, and it's not a book that I've forgotten in a hurry at all. So I definitely would recommend that one. So moving on. This is a book I read this year, and I did actually mention this book in my previous video, and this is The Remains of the Day. Where to start with this book? It's such a hard book to describe. I feel like it's one of those books where I'm going to say to you, just go and read it. Go and read it and then come back to me and tell me what you think. So essentially this is following the life of a butler who works in a big stately home. His previous employer is no longer around and he's now employed by an American gentleman, and this American gentleman says to him, you need a break, have a holiday, because as the butler of the house, he's so focused on his work and the roles and the responsibilities that come with that. He doesn't really ever take much time for himself. So this new employer's like, look, go on a road trip, and I will and I will pay for your petrol. I've got a car you can use. You know, go off and explore and have some time out. And as a part of that, he decides to reconnect with the old housekeeper who has since left the employment of the house, because he's worried. He's like, oh, I could do with some more staff, and oh, things are going a bit wrong. And it's a really peculiar read. He's a very peculiar character. He's very set in his ways, very British, very stiff upper lip, I think is the best way I can describe him. And some of the things that happen in this book, you're just like, oh my goodness, what's wrong with you? You know, he's almost like robotic in some respects. And there are some bits in there that are genuinely so moving and so sad, what's going on around him. And yet this book is more about what's not said than what is said. You really have to read between the lines with this book. But this book has really, really stayed with me. I absolutely loved it. In fact, I want to read some more by this author, and I always butcher his name. I think it's Kazuo Ishiguro is his name. He's written a lot, but this is... I've read another one of his, which was Nocturnes, which I didn't mind. I wasn't quite so keen on. This is phenomenal. It's all I can say. And if you haven't read it, just read it and see what you think. It's a slow burner, but it's just so worth it. So worth it. So going back to some Japanese fiction again, we have Convenience Store Woman. Again, this was quite an early read in my Japanese fiction journey. And again, this is another book. Oh God, it's really hard to describe. It's about a woman, the title says it there. It's about a woman who works in a Japanese convenience store. Now, I liked it. I know, again, I always say this, you shouldn't judge books by their cover, but I loved it for the fact that you have the little fish that comes in packets of sushi. I'm obsessed with these little fishes. I think they're so cute. There's something about them. I don't know what it is. And I wanted to read it just based on this, but she works in this convenience store, and everyone's like, well, why are you working in this convenience store? You could do so much more. But she's really happy working in a convenience store, and I like the fact that it follows the sort of routines of the store. It's so regimented, the way they do everything, and she as a character is brilliant, and I really, really enjoyed this. And again, it's a really hard book to describe. It's a bit like Remains of the Day. It doesn't really go anywhere. It's you know, it's not life-changing, but it's unusual and it's quirky. And I would definitely say, if you're looking for Japanese fiction and you want some recommendations, that one, definitely. And it's only short as well. This is not a particularly long book, so it's not that much to get through. So this is really, really good. Changing tack for a moment. This is a book. Well, I don't know if I can't really... I think I read this when I was young. I certainly watched the television programme of this, a televised version they did on Children's BBC in the days of the broom cupboard, because, you know, again, that's how old I am. And that is Moondial by Helen Cresswell. Now, the fact that this is a children's book, don't let that put you off. It's actually quite dark in places, this book. It's all about a girl called Minty who has to go and spend the summer with her aunts in a place called Belton in Lincolnshire. And while she's there, she goes off and discovers Belton House. Now, you can actually go to Belton House. It is owned by the National Trust. It's on my bucket list of things I would really like to do, because the sundial that features so prominently in this story and is on the cover here does exist in Belton House, and they used to do moondial tours. I don't know if they still do, and some of the interior of the house was used and the exterior. So if you've watched the programme like I have, you will recognise Belton House if you ever go to see it. So like I say, this is about Minty, and she's spending the summer in this really, it's like almost like the Back of Beyond, really. And it's the adventures that she has while she's there, because she meets these children who are from the past in the house, and they're almost like trapped like ghosts. And she meets them through different time frames, but the sundial plays a really pivotal role in helping her travel back through time. As a kid, I loved it, but it quite scared me at parts when I was younger, because there's some quite dark scenes in it, especially with one little girl called, I think it's Sarah. And I absolutely loved it. And I still love it to this day. And I managed to find this in Waterstones, and I was so excited to see it, and I had to go and get a copy of it. And then I've read it, and I've loved it. So if you've never read Moonsisle, and if you've never watched it, I definitely recommend it. Obviously, if you do watch the televised version, it is quite old now, but it's brilliant, absolutely brilliant. I'd definitely recommend that one. We're changing tack again. I am a big fan of true crime. I love true crime. I watch all the really trashy true crime programs on Hey You. So this was a book I'd wanted to read for ages, which is I'll Be Gone in the Dark by Michelle McNamara. This is about the Golden State Killer. This is genuinely terrifying. She was obsessed with finding the person that was perpetrating or had perpetrated these really awful crimes. He was basically breaking into people's houses and committing really awful acts. It was awful, and there were quite a few points in this book where I actually had to stop reading because I was reading it at night, and it was genuinely terrifying me how he got into people's houses and what he did. And they just couldn't find who he was. I think the police came close a couple of times to almost catching him, but they just didn't. And really sadly, she devoted a lot of her life to trying to unmask who the Golden State Killer was. And very sadly, she actually, I don't know if this is really spoiling it, but she died before he was actually found. They have eventually found who did it, and he has been brought to justice. But it was a long time after the killings had stopped before they actually worked out, I think, with the advances of modern DNA techniques, because obviously these killings were taking place at a time when DNA technology wasn't like it is now, that we can sort of take for granted. It didn't exist. It was absolutely brilliant, and it was like literally her life's work to find. So this book here is really clever because it documents not just the crimes that have been perpetrated and the victims of the crimes. It also talks about her obsession and how it took over her life and what it meant to her to find who did this. Now, like I say, I'm a big true crime fan, and I really enjoyed this. And it was quite an intense read. I had to stop a couple of times. But if you like true crime, this is definitely one of the top ones to go for. I definitely say this is a good one. Right, so we're going to go back again, and we're going to do a bit more Japanese fiction. I liked this one so much that I actually bought this for my mum, because my mum's a big Richard Osman fan. She loves Richard Osman, so I thought that she might like a change of pace. And that is What You Are Looking For Is in the Library. I just loved this book. I think I was drawn in because we have a cat on the cover. But this is a collection. Well, every chapter is about a different person. And for whatever reason, these people are drawn to this little local library. And I love the depictions of the librarian. She's obviously quite maybe a sort of larger lady. And she sits there felting. So she felts these little figures. And one chap refers to her as the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man, which is, I'm a huge fan of Ghostbusters. That really tickled me, and I think that really sold the book for me as well. So everybody finds their way to this library for one way or another, and they're at a crossroads in their lives where they don't know what to do, or they need some help, they need answers, and they're going into the library to maybe look for certain books. And they approach the librarian and she helps them, but what she also does is she recommends a book that they weren't looking for. And a lot of them are quite puzzled. They're like, well, why are you telling me about this book? And it transpires that quite often this book is actually not what they were looking for, but this book actually helps them. And then she also gives everybody a little felted figure that's particular to them and their story. It's really uplifting. I think that's the thing. I think that's why I like a lot of Japanese fiction, because I find a lot of it very uplifting and very sweet and very easy to read and comforting, a bit like in my last video I talked about the Before the Coffee Gets Cold series. I didn't bring those ones with me today because I thought, well, we've already talked about those, so we won't go there again, but they are also very good. I've read 2 of them so far. But this is just, I don't know, it's just lovely. It's really, really lovely. And again, these books, they kind of meander around a little bit. I think that's the way with Japanese fiction. It's just how it is. But also, I just always think with them, they're so beautifully presented. Like, why would you not want to have that on your bookshelf? You know, it's just, what a lovely, lovely book. So I would definitely, again, if you've not read any Japanese fiction and you're thinking about where to start, that's a really good starting point. Okay, so now we're on to the final two books. And, now these are probably almost neck and neck for my current favourite books. Both of these I read, I want to say I read both of them last year. So we're gonna go with this one to start off with. And I make no secret of the fact that I am a huge Stephen King fan. I've been a fan of Stephen King since I was a teenager when I first read Christine, and since then I've read other bits and pieces of his over the years. I mean, obviously Stephen King has written a lot. There's a lot of books to choose from with Stephen King. I think, as I said in my last video, he's thought of as a horror writer, but there is a lot more to Stephen King than just horror. He does do really good thrillers. And there is one book that I think I'm not alone in having it as one of my favourites, and probably my absolute favourite Stephen King book. And that is 11/22/63. Now, if you're not familiar with this book, and look at the size of it, it's quite a hefty. Again, it's a bit of a hefty tome, this one. This is the story of a man who is given the chance to go back in time and what would happen if JFK was never assassinated. Now, this book really appealed to me because I find the whole conspiracy around JFK really, really fascinating, and I do often think to myself, well, what would the world have been like if JFK hadn't been assassinated in Dealey Plaza in Dallas all those years ago? Would we have a different world now? Would it still have gone the same way with the presidents that we've had over the years? I don't know. Who knows? We're never going to know, are we? And again, was it a lone gunman? Was there a conspiracy? We'll never. I don't suppose we're ever going to know, really. So this follows the story of a man called Jake, who's an English teacher, and I have to say, again, I've said it before and I'm going to say it again, Stephen King absolutely nails characters and characterisation of people. And Jake is he's just a nice man. He's a lovely, lovely man. And he stumbles across a portal at the back of I think it's like a sort of dining car that you sort of step through, and it takes you back in time. And every time you go back and you come back in time, it resets. So every time you go back, you've got to do all the same things again and go through it again. And that's what happens in this book. It's a lot of backwards and forwards, a lot of the past, the present, and then what actually happened. Does he do it? And I'm not going to say. I'm not going to give that away. You have to read it for yourself to find out. Does he save JFK? Does he not? And we get a lot of supposed insight into Lee Harvey Oswald and who he was and what he was like and what his wife was like, what his family was like. I mean, obviously a lot of it's probably conjecture. I don't know. Maybe we don't know. It's also quite a brutal look at America in this time frame and what was going on. Stephen King doesn't ever pull any punches, that man. He doesn't sugarcoat things. He doesn't sugarcoat how the past was. He tells it like it is. But there is something about this book. I believe that the ending was actually rewritten on, I think it might have been the advice of his son, Joe Hill, another brilliant author. If you haven't read Joe Hill, I recommend Joe Hill, which is Stephen King's son. And the ending of this book, I'm not going to lie, it made me cry. I think it's the only Stephen King book that has ever reduced me to tears. And this one did reduce me to tears. And I'm not alone in that. If you go on the Stephen King Reddit forums, you will see that a lot of people say this is probably the most emotional book that Stephen King has ever written. Again, if you've never read Stephen King and you're wondering where to start, this is a really good one to start with. 100%. I would recommend this. If you're not a fan of the horror genre, but you still think you'd like to read some Stephen King, this is a very good starting point for that. Absolutely. So we're going to move on to the final book, and before we do, I'm just going to have a quick swig of wine to psych myself up for this one. So I read this book on the recommendation of my husband, Mr. S. This was an author that he had read and really enjoyed, and then he went on to read the one I'm going to show in a moment, and he was just so taken and so moved by this book that I thought, I'm going to have to read it. It was quite out of my comfort zone. It wasn't really something that I thought I'd ever read. And it certainly was not a book that I thought would probably be on my all-time absolute #1 favourites. And that is On the Beach by Nevil Shute. Now, this is a proper post-apocalyptic story. So to give you an idea, what has happened, there's been an all-out nuclear war and majority of the world has died. And all that is left are people living in the southern hemisphere, sort of in Australia. But unfortunately, the nuclear fallout is working its way towards them. And the inevitable is it's going to happen. They are living on borrowed time. And this book follows the story of the people and how they cope with knowing that they are facing their own mortality. Now, it's such a weird concept. I mean, obviously, we all know that we aren't going to live forever. My dad always said, there's nothing more certain in life than death and taxes. And it's absolutely right. There is nothing more certain. We are born, we live, we die. We know that. But what most of us don't know is we don't know when we're going to die. But these people, sadly, they don't quite know when it's going to happen, but they know it's going to happen. And it follows their lives. And they all handle it differently. Some people are in absolute denial and are still trying to carry on living a normal life. Other people are just going, well, never mind, we're just going to go off with reckless abandon. And there's some really moving parts in this story where people they know that their death is inevitable, so they kind of think, well, I'm going to do it on my own terms, and I'm going to decide when I go. The ending of this book almost broke me. It's really such an emotional read, but oh my, it's just so worth reading. I think it will stay with me forever. I just can't imagine a world where that everybody else is gone. I mean, they're sending out ships and stuff because they think they can find signals. I mean, I'm sure Lost takes some inspiration from parts of this book. And of course, all they're met with is utter devastation. Everyone has pretty much gone and they are the only people left. And this cloud, if you like, is approaching. And you've going through the book knowing that we're counting down to the inevitable end. It's going to happen. We can't escape it. It's so beautifully written. I feel like it's a book that, I don't know, I think probably more people are aware of it than maybe I think they are. I feel like it goes under the radar. It's just brilliant. This is also the author that wrote A Town Like Alice, which was what I think my husband read first and thoroughly enjoyed that, and then went on to read this. So I haven't read any more by Nevil Shute. This is the only one that I've actually read. I don't think I'll forget it in a hurry. So I know I feel like I'm finishing a bit of a downer there, but it's just, honestly, if you want to push yourself out of your comfort zone and you want to try a bit of post-apocalyptic writing, then I would definitely say Nevil Shute is the one for you. So I hope you've enjoyed that roundup. I feel like I've tried to cover some different genres there. We've had true crime, we've had children's, we've had post-apocalyptic, we've had Stephen King with a bit of time travel. We could even say that's a bit of sci-fi going on there. And we've had some Japanese fiction, because, I love my Japanese fiction. But please let me know if any of those books have been ones that you have read and that you have really enjoyed. And also, if you have any recommendations for books that you have read and have stayed with you, please do let me know, because I'm always looking to expand what I read. So I wish you all happy reading. Thank you for watching, and I will see you again soon. Bye bye.